I've made some really good progress with this Park 150, and I've about got the overall preamp and everything sorted out perfectly. The one remaining thing left to do is I found out that the RN65 resistor leads do not quite span the entire distance. The RN75s do. I've got to get this value resistor in an RN75 as opposed to a 65. That's my fault for not sorting my Mauser stuff better. I just sorted to RN. I should have specified 75. But I had some 75s in that batch. Just the value that sounds the best is not the long enough lead. So that's on me. But there's some other issues we'll get to. I didn't show everything I've done through the process because there's a lot of stuff. The previous tech had replaced all the pots on the input, and in the process he had cut a lot of the leads too short. Now, I'm not saying he because all techs are male. I'm saying in this case I think the tech was a he because he did not stop and ask for directions. Sorry about that joke. I mean that aimed more at us guys than at anyone else. But I had to replace all the wires going to the front panel. I had to get them a little bit longer so I could steer them away from each other. When they were all short, they were all bunched up together and just strained and not good. So that dramatically lowered the noise floor. I had a very microphonic tube socket in V2 that's been changed out for a Belton. I was able to move over the old plate resistor, which is still fine. I installed shielded input grids, the wires from the input jacks to V1. I think almost all the Brimar tubes are good, one of which might have a little bit of this static thing. I'll try to clean those pins and see if that goes away. If not, I'll move it to one of the less important gain stages and have the good Brimars for the first two. I got the presence control working. This amp would never have had the presence working as it came in. The circuit was designed to have a 100K negative feedback resistor connected to the 4 ohm tap of the output transformer. Well, this output transformer does not have, never has had, a 4 ohm tap. The speaker selector switch 4 ohm tab was never even soldered, but it had that 100K and it was connected to this the common of the switch, which meant that if you had it at 16, it was at 16. If it was 8, it was at 8. If it was at 4, the amp would blow up because there was no load. That's been fixed. So I have it now connected, instead of to the common, I have it connected to the 8 ohm tab at all times. So the amount of negative feedback will not vary depending on the load. And 47K puts us where we ought to be. And 5K pot, 5K pot paralleled by a 4.7K resistor gets the right range on the presence. So all that's good. And here's where the amp is sounding now. Bring the master up to about 2 o'clock. Now, as I adjust these things, you're going to hear hum come and go because this power transformer has got a massive field. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. So. Let you hear that unclean. At the higher master volume settings, the presence does more. That was the channel volume at about 9 o'clock. Let's turn it up to about noon. Turn down the master a little bit for my cab, which is only 130 watts. Turn the master down a little bit more to about 10 o'clock. Turn the gain up to about 3 o'clock on that channel. There's some kind of artifact I'm hearing now. oscillation. That might just be because I'm standing within 3 feet of the transformer. I turn the master, turn that preamp up some more. It's not, the amp itself is not oscillating. Let me move farther away from the guitar with the guitar. All right, there is some oscillation happening there. Let's see where it goes away. I'm gonna turn the master down so we're not killing ourselves. All right, so what's going on is I need to decrease the gain in this cathode here. I'm still playing around with this. This is a 1K, and I tried a 12K, tried a 10K, tried a 5.6K. All those were too anemic. Whatever the gain is right here with this at about 3 o'clock, once I find where this should be, it's probably going to be 2 to 3K range. We should be fine, and what's now 3 o'clock will become full on this. And the reason it's so finicky is this circuit has one extra gain stage compared to most Marshalls. So it has a cathodiene driver stage where other amps have a split tail pair, Schmidt, what do you want to call it? Long tail pair, sorry, phase inverter, which is more or less unity gain. This has got a driver stage for a cathodiene splitter, which has gain. So it's not oscillating right there. Let me turn the master up. Anyone's going to be lacking gain even if I further decrease gain here. I mean, the amp is set to stun right now, and that's with the master volume at noon, and it's as loud as most 50-watt amps. Now let me turn all that noise off. Playing around with this gain's always fun. I just need to get some more long resistors, so when I find the right value, it'll span that whole thing prettily. The issue I'm having, and these are the old KT88s it came with. I've got some new EH KT88s that I put in. There's a hum in the output, and it's worse with the new ones because the new ones are stronger tubes and have more output level. I put these old ones back in to make sure that the new match quad wasn't bad, but they're fine. It just, you have even more output level with the fresh tubes than with the old ones. But there's a hum. And I have a concern about that hum. I'm not going to go too far into the weeds, but this amp very possibly has a non-original output transformer. There's some debate on that, still doing some research. The seller said it was original, and in fact, the red paint on the screws for that output transformer indicate that it might be original. On the other side, all other Park 150s that I have been able to get information on, and all Marshall majors seem to universally have ultralinear output transformers. This one does not. And without getting too far into the details, what that means is that an amplifier which has ultralinear output transformers would power each pair of output tubes from one side from different sides of the output transformer. So each there'd be the center tap to the output. What do you do on my fingers? There's a center tap of the output transformer right there. That's the center tap. Got it? Then we've got the plate connection here and the other plate connection here. So, and if I were a little bit better at this, I'd be the shocker. But anyway, you have the center tap of the output transformer, and you have, say, primary 1, primary 2. That's how most output transformers work, and that's what's in here. And then the screen to the output tubes is taken from a different point, and I'll talk about that. Ultralinear has 2 more taps. So you have the center tap, you have primary 1, primary 2, you also have screen tap 1, screen tap 2. And so those two KT88s would be connected to this screen tap, and their plates would be connected to this primary. And these two KT88s would be connected to this screen tap and to this plate. But we don't have that. We've got the shocker. Arr. There goes my rating on this video. But anyway, so an ultralinear output gives a louder clean. This thing would have been even louder if it had ultralinear output transformer. But it does not. And so that's a point against it being original, except for the following. I think this might just be a historical oddity. It has the red paint undisturbed on the 4 bolts, the 4 nuts which hold the output transformer in place. Well, that can be faked. The speaker selector switch had red paint on its 8 and 16 ohm taps. This output transformer has no 4 ohm tap, and this, before I connected the 4 to the 8 here so that there's not a possibility of someone connecting without a load, the 4 ohm tap on the selector switch had never been soldered. So if this transformer was replaced, it was replaced with another transformer which also did not have a 4 ohm tap. I can tell the difference between a lug which used to be soldered and had the solder removed versus one that was never soldered to begin with. This lug on this selector switch had never been removed, and the selector switch seems to be original to the amp. It matches the voltage selector switch precisely. Now, maybe this was something that radio spares, RS in the UK, just had tons of in the late 60s and 70s, and so I would not know if it was replaced. But the other factors also point to this being either original or the replacement was done by a perfectionist maniac. Now, tellingly, all the transformer connections in this amp have this wiring harness, this loom. And this is something you don't see in a lot of Marshalls and Parks. You see it to a degree in old Marshalls, but this is really to a level that you usually associate with high watt, the stuff Harry Joyce did. And this was a wiring technique used by the RAF during World War II and after World War II. It's a way to keep wires neat and bundled together in an airplane fuselage and cockpit and all that stuff. It's overkill, severe overkill here. Very few people do it today, partially because the zip tie exists and partially because this just adds, unless you're really good at this, it adds hours to the cost. But this all seems to have been done at once with all this tubing here, and I just don't see why anyone would ever replace the output transformer and then go to such trouble to recreate this unless they were just a fanatic. Maybe this was replaced by Harry Joyce, in which case it has its own historical value. But the big thing that tells me that this output transformer may be original to the amp is that these 4 large resistor blocks are all joined together on the screen connection by one continuous bare wire with some tubing over the bare wire in between them. And this one, and this one have factory original solder joints. So they've never been reflowed. They still have the red paint on them. So if this had been ultralinear, these two would be connected together. And these two would be connected together, but there'd be no connection here and here. But this one has all 4 of them are connected. This solder joint has been changed, rewired. That does not mean that anything other than that wire had to be replaced. Maybe it got too hot. So all these factors tell me that it's very possible that this output transformer is original to the amp. But we have that background hum. I suspect, and I will do some things with some temporary measures to confirm this, that the issue is they are deriving the screen supply from the first node B plus node of the amp, which usually is only powering the center tap of the output transformer, and then goes through the choke to everything else. So it has the least amount of filtering, the most amount of AC ripple, which is what I think we're hearing here. We're hearing the ripple from this rectifier, and it's unaffected by the master volume. It's covered up by the self noise of the amp a little bit, but you lower the master volume to 1 o'clock or below, and that becomes really noticeable. And that needs to go away. So I suspect that if I were to put in a second choke or a resistor with a new capacitor network, new filter cap node, and give that to the screens, that hum would go away. Now, the other thing I can do, and I will test to see how it sounds, is I could disconnect this yellow wire here from the screen nodes. That's the screen wire going to here on the HT fuse that feeds these resistors and then to the output tubes. So I could disconnect this wire here and temporarily connect this yellow wire to this node here, which is the second node after the choke, which is where a screen node is connected in most Marshalls or most amps which do not have an ultralinear output transformer. At which point we'd have the filtering benefits of the choke, and the choke seems fine to handle the screen current, and additional filtering. And I bet that will also reduce this noise. What I need to measure now is what the screen voltage is now versus the screen voltage if I were to connect it to the second node. So that the first node of this amp, we are at 526 volts right now. The wall voltage has dropped to 110. It's climbing back up. I can tell you that when the wall voltage is at 120, that's closer to 570 volts. So let's say right now 526, and the second node is 523. So that would be fine. In fact, let's do that. Let's do that pretty much on camera. Only power the amp off and confirm that voltage is drained off of here before I disconnect this wire. All right, it's down to 2.5 volts. It drains, these caps drain through the center tap, and they also drain through this node, which has the dropping resistors, as long as the amp is not taken out of standby immediately. All right, down to 2 volts. I will risk that. Let me unplug it from the wall, so to speak, at my receptacle, just to be sure that I don't brush up against any nastiness here. And let me find where I put my good solder sucker. If this works, it saves us the expense of additional caps and or resistors and or chokes. Also solves some real estate problem issues in the amp. There's not a lot of room to add that stuff. I suspect that it will work, and I hope that not only will it work, but that hum will disappear, because that's what's bothering me at this point. All right, it was never a very good solder joint from the factory. The factory that is. I'm just going to flow some. I'm going to replace, if this works, or either way, I'm going to replace that little bit of yellow wire because it's not very good. For right now, I'm just going to flow some solder to it and grab a piece of wire I've got laying around that'll be long enough. Needs to be a bit longer than that. The only thing that this node here directly powers now are the plates on the 12AU7 driver. So this should not affect anything. There's always a chance that not having filtering between the screen and that driver would solve one problem, introduce another. We'll see. You know, these things are funky. But I'd like to get rid of that hum. And I don't think it's a ground loop. I think it's just ripple. And if I'm talking too much during this, sorry. These old amps are intrinsically interesting. And this one has some unique Features and problems. All right, we're just going to temp this in. Use this black wire. It's a good sign that I'm temping it in, because I would never use a black wire for a power connection like this. But right now it only has to be, there's not much current through it, so it doesn't have to be rock solid. It just has to be good enough. Now, let's see. Right here, I've got that butt splice. I don't want that to touch anything adjacent to it. I don't want it to touch chassis or anything else. I'm just put a little bit of painter's tape there. Some temporary insulation. And I'm not worried about that one there. So, just in case there's some massive problem with this that I have not anticipated, I've got the current limiter on, powered on. Now those tubes are already pretty warm, so let's take it out of standby. There's an initial surge of current, then it goes down to operating levels. All right, that's with the master on 10. Master on 0, all that hum is gone. That's a nice thing. I like that. Let's confirm that the screens aren't too far away now from the plates. So the plate voltage is at about 537, and the screen is now at 536. That's pretty healthy. Let's see what it sounds like. You have no idea how happy this makes me to get that last bit of that hum out, and which means I can put in the good new KT88s, and let's see what it sounded like. That hum was because I was standing too close to the transformer with my guitar as I turned up this knob. So I've got the, I'm going to set the, there's a transition there at the volume. I'm going to see if I'm getting any oscillation there at that volume transition point. Interesting. It seems to have done away with that, might have done away with that oscillation that we were getting at the higher gain stuff. Let me back the master down, dime that, and get away from the transformer and try that again. That might have cured that little bit of oscillation we had. Almost. It has greatly reduced it, but I still want to bring the gain down. And I'll play around. Maybe I need to shield a little bit more, because there's that from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock, there's this little sound like something is happening. I need to check that out. But, you know, let's put the volume down here at 10 o'clock. And turn the master up just a hair, bass down, mids treble up a little bit. That is really close to being goddamn awesome. Let's see what the normal channel is sounding like. We are so close to having this thing just being made of rainbow tears and shit. That's with the volume at 10 o'clock on the normal channel. You know, and I just pretty much just hold a note at random. A little bit of feedback on that one, but it likes this C a lot. For that channel, let's bring the presence up a little bit. Yeah, that channel is awesome too. It's dark in comparison, but it's not tubby, and it's got amazing lows, and it wants to feed back just from the volume interaction with the pickups. So, and that was with the master volume at 1 o'clock, you know. So, good Lord, imagine this through two 4x12s. All right, so what I need to do now is play around with the cathode on V2B. I think I'll probably do it the fun way, and that's install a pot in here. And I know that 1K now is too much. That'll be my minimum. So I'll put in a 10K pot in series with that and play with it and see where I like it. Once I dial it in, I'll measure what that is. I'll replace it with an RN75 of the correct value that'll span that, and it'll be fantastic. So the 10K and 12K that are out there on schematics seem to be weak on this amp. The 1.5K and 820s that I've seen out there, and that this amp came in with, it came in with a 1.5K bypassed with a 47 microfarad, with an oscillation city now that everything else is working right. You know, those are that's too much gain. Just got to get it perfect Goldilocks just right. And I'm really pleased with the screen, and I will replace this Tim black wire with a very nice wire. And since all the screen resistors are in parallel with each other, I will not be connecting from here to here. I will connect to this screen grid resistor or this one, and just have a shorter path, and I can tuck it underneath that pretty bundled stuff. Errata, while I'm here, I put in a shunt to the ground tip, the tip connection from ground to tip normal on this output jack. So if nothing is plugged in to either jack, there'll be a grounded out output, so there's always a load. There will be no sound, but nothing will blow up. And I look forward to finding out more about this output transformer, but now that I know that the amp is sounding good and I got rid of the last of that buzz, I don't particularly care about the historical accuracy or not, or lack thereof. It's cool if this is original and it's just a one-off or very rare thing. I'll let the people who compare knob colors on mid 57 versus late 57 Les Pauls discuss that. So far, it's sounding awesome. The amp needs a little less gain, maybe a little playing around with some lead dress. I need to check out whether that Brimar that had a little bit of static, there it is, needs to be replaced. I put in the new KT88s and have a rock solid amp. I'm a little concerned that I won't be able to save some of the Rasta hats because the plastic tubing in them, it's just so old, it's deteriorated. But this is a head, it is not a hanged-on combo. It does not need tube retainers, really. This is not going on world tour, this is living in a recording studio. So I will let the owner know about that, it's his call. They can stay in the amp just, to the side or on or whatever. They're not doing anything bad, but they're not going to offer any real retention just because The old tubing is falling apart. Interesting, that makes a noise when I touch that, but not that. I'll investigate that, see if that behavior continues with a new KT88, whether that's something weird about this one. That's just strange. Maybe the rosters need to come off just so that can't happen in the middle of a take. Anyway, I'm going on a long time. Where did I put my little paintbrush pointer? Here it is. I can't find my black pointer that I usually use. Those things disappear on me. I've got this old center tap here for the heaters. I need to tape that off. That'll get taped off. This wire will be replaced neatly. I'll have zero hum, zero buzz. Dial in the gain, get it sounding perfect. Right now it just sounds damn good. And see where we're at.